I'm Eric Chemi, and this is Politely Pushy. Welcome to Politely Pushy. I'm Eric Chemi. We're here at the end of the year, the beginning of the new year, and it's all about those awards. It's so many companies, they want to say 2024 is going to be an award-winning year for me. We're going to win a big award. We're going to do something special. We're going to do award-winning work. We hear these phrases a lot, but there's a lot of things people don't know. A lot of do's, a lot of don'ts about getting these awards or not getting these awards. So I'm really pleased to be bringing in my friend Betsy here. Betsy Quinn, you were the expert. You were the expert for 20 years, focused on awards, working at Ketchum for 38 years. You were the, as somebody said to me, the most award-winning executive in the industry. And not necessarily you, but the work that you've done behind the scenes that Ketchum could win so many awards. And then didn't they win some award that was like, you won the award for winning the most awards over the last 20 years. I think that's all because of your work. So Betsy, thank you so much for joining me. And I'm excited to have this conversation.
The secret weapon. I'm the secret weapon.
You're the secret weapon. So let's just get into, what are the main reasons why companies should want to try to win awards?
Well, there's so many reasons really. And, I always start when companies say, help me with awards, help me win awards. I always start with the why. Why do you want to win? What do you want to do with these award wins? And, so many companies are using it for attracting top talent and retaining top talent. In fact, Curtis today, I just saw his LinkedIn post. He's looking for new staff, which is of course delightful to hear because it's been a really tough year. AAEs, AEs, senior AEs, and he talked about joining, the most award-winning agency pound by pound as just, cited by PR Week, which is huge. And I know certainly at my former agency, it was a big deal. I mean, we were known for winning awards. And what new employee, at any level, doesn't want to work for an award winner? They want to work on exciting work.
I didn't realize that awards had a recruiting effect. I always thought it was, we can get more clients, we can, we get some ego stroking. I never thought of it as people that you want to hire, people that don't even work here yet will come because you win an award or not.
But think about it. You want to work with people doing exciting work, or you're bored and you want things for your resume. When winning is a huge accomplishment and that recognition is really important to people. And the client aspect is also extremely important. I know, companies will often say, well, how do you quantify financially awards? And, give me the ROI, how much money did it bring in? And you can't really do that. But we know that growth teams are approached by clients every day who see a performance of an agency at an award show and, want to work with a winning agency. They want top creative work. So, and of course, with our corporate communications teams and our clients, our CMOs, winning awards together with them shows that the work is best of class. And again, the agencies are constantly going through reviews against competition because clients demand excellence, best of class work. So no question that that's important too.
Does the reason for winning an award change your approach though? If it's like, I want to win this award for employee recruitment, do you do something different than if you're trying to win it for new business development? Or does the reason affect what you do later? If you know what I mean?
Yeah, it changes your overall award strategy. So again, if you're doing it for employees, they want to win, and clients often want to win some of the biggest shows. Certainly categories within shows are important. So let's say a healthcare practice, they want to focus on healthcare shows. That's where potential new business is going to see them in their element. To the same end, the creative shows, this is the goal certainly of most major brands, companies, and increasingly public relations agencies, as these shows have added categories specific to the public relations discipline. So you have to really develop a strategy designed realistically to go after shows that are going to benefit you most. You have to be knowledgeable about what is awards worthy and what isn't, and what is competitive in those shows. Obviously, PR Week, US Awards is a good example. They're seeking campaigns of the year in any given sector. So that's a pretty tall bar. Not every piece of work, is going to be appropriate for that show, but there are tons of other shows where clients can be very successful. So you have to evaluate the work at hand and what is awards worthy about it.
What's the biggest mistake that you see companies make in terms of, like do's and don'ts because obviously you're not a Ketchum now, you're helping other companies try to get the same success that you accomplished to Ketchum. So internally, I'm sure you had a lot of battles of like, look, we got to do it this way and not that way. And then now you're probably having these same conversations externally. What are some repeated mistakes that you see?
Well, I actually have a complete list if you want me to, honestly. And I think it does start with often teams not knowing what is or isn't awards worthy and where it can play. I was so proud this past year in developing campaigns for Cannes Lions, which is the hardest show, obviously, to win. It's an advertising creative show. So very, very little work is going to win there. And there was this hidden gem in the UK office that nobody had really spotted as award show material, creative award show material, because on the surface, it looked as if, heck, it's public affairs work at its best. It's incredible media relations work, but at the heart of it was this magical idea. And I think companies have to realize that the idea wins, not a whole kitchen sink of tactics. And so I often see entries that are very complicated and convoluted. They're written almost as if they should be in a college textbook. And imagine you're a judge reading several hundred entries. You want to read an entry that tells a great story, that's convincing, that is simple, not so complex. So
you're right. Like you would say, it's the idea. It's not all the tactics. I think people are trying to focus on, well, I did all this work. I did all this stuff. It's the opposite of college, where in college you need to show the work. You can't just have the answer.
Sound impressive, right? Big long sentences.
Now it's the opposite. Now it's like, just give me the answer. I don't care about the work.
Yeah. Well, and understanding the difference between strategies, insights, ideas, and tactics, and being able to simplify and articulate each one. But I think, I often start, I think the reason I'm a good awards counselor is because, well, early in my career, everything we pretty much did in our team and our brand team won awards because we set out with an intention to do work that was awards worthy. And that's really important because we had to check the boxes. And I always think, to serve clients well, every team should be doing something that is best of class and is awards worthy for their clients. We set out with intention to always win, but we take a strategic planning approach. And I think, as I evolved in my career over the years, I became a strategic and creative planner, and I helped actually develop the first planning process for the agency, adapting it from advertising tools and advertising's approach so that we didn't start thinking about the work from a publicity standpoint, like our goal is how to get publicity, but rather how do we meet the business goals of this work for this brand. And that's a big mindset shift. So when I approach an entry and I take a look at the first draft, I often re-engineer it. I take it down to the studs, we back up, and do they understand the true business goal and intention? Because the media goal, like you might say, well, we need publicity for the holiday period for this product, but that's not the goal. The goal is to sell the product. And that's a very simple example of that. But teams get confused. And so I often read entries that start out with the only goal being publicity and then the only measurement being impressions. And obviously we got to look at what we're doing for the business. So a deeper look.
Who are these judges, by the way? And does understanding who they are affect how you approach your entry?
Not really, because all the judges are from the industry. So, in the advertising creative shows, you're going to see top CMOs and advertising creative directors. In the PR industry, you're going to see very senior people, people with lots of years of experience, experts on different industries. They'll be assigned to different categories where they really deeply know that business, that sector. Rightfully. And, they all bring their own personal bias to the mix and their own knowledge of the business and what is awards worthy and what isn't. So I don't think that's particularly a mystery. At the end of the day,
And since like there are politics involved, like, okay, this guy's my friend or he's my enemy, my competitor. Like this, when we think about Oscars and Golden Globes, there's all those hidden intrigue and politics. How much of that is going on here versus truly the best work is going to win?
Well, it's a good point. I mean, in advertising creative shows, the entries must be blind. So in other words, you can't disclose the ad agency, the production company, the media agency, the PR firm. It's all blind. So, I always recommend writing entries in the form of we, the team. You don't disclose. So you want to eliminate that kind of bias. I did that early on with teams who, because oftentimes I'd read these entries where we're just bragging about the agency. And no, I mean, that could introduce bias conceivably. It's like that agency wins too many awards. I want to give it to somebody else. So the PR awards are not, there is one that wants it blind, but by and large, for the most part, they're not. And that's something you just have to face if there is a bias in the room against your agency. Let's hope not. Judges are bound to a level of professionalism, and certainly the trades expect them to do their job and award work that they believe deserves merit, and really achieve success. I think that, you get back to some of the secrets to winning. Judges respond to a big problem. Again, the problem can't be publicity, getting coverage. The problem has to be real and authentic and meaningful. We have to make judges care about the work. So it has to be aspirational. Your goals have to be aspirational. And then they're looking for increasingly a big idea, bold, brave, disruptive. And of course, that doesn't fit every piece of work today. Not every client is doing bold, disruptive, activist work.
Yeah, some of it is like, you're doing B2B work, right? So you're doing something that's basic block and tackling for companies that are regulatory constrained. We don't need to get too crazy here. We just need to talk about our product and our features. And that's very different, having been to Cannes Lion myself and seeing what gets shortlisted and what wins. And it's all, with a social agenda kind of thing, right? Hey, I'm doing something purpose, right? That it's not, hey, this company made more money. This $1 billion company made a few extra $1 million because we did something good. That's not what seems to win awards. And I think people get stuck. Well, hey, I'm trying to run a business here. We're trying to make money, trying to help my clients make money. And sometimes the award-winning work seems to be, loss leaders, right? Things that, we did a nonprofit. We took no money. We spent money on it. We didn't make a dime, but we won the award.
Well, that's certainly, I think, the game in advertising creative shows, less so in the public relations shows. But, no question, there is certain kinds of work that in brands that allow agencies to do bolder, sexier kinds of work. So, that helps. But, Cannes Lions introduced B2B Lions, I guess it was last year, maybe it might be in its second year, recognizing this very fact. To the same end, about 10 years ago, they launched the health and pharma Lions because, as you pointed out, in pharma, it's highly regulated around the world. So what agencies are able and companies are able to do and talk about is at a different level. So obviously, that all plays into it. But, I look at BuzzBar and what Curtis has done in tech and in healthcare and heavily in B2B. And you absolutely can do creative work in these areas. Again, the tactics itself, how we execute, isn't usually very creative, but the ideas and the problems we're solving with innovation are. So he's a direct example of how you can absolutely win with B2B work and healthcare work. So
what about the idea that the award submission really has to be in its format truly exemplary, right? I see so many stories about you can't just write up a bunch of written answers to their questions. You got to give them something more, imagery, video, something bigger than even the format that they've asked for the entries to be submitted in.
Well, and again, PR shows and advertising creative shows are two different kind of genres. And the advertising creative shows require case films, 2-minute case films, and work wins or loses with the case film. And I always believe the written entry and the case film need to be better than the work itself. That's kind of the joke inside the industry, it has to be so compelling to cut through. And I will say, increasingly, public relations shows, Provoke Media, PR Week, Campaign, they want to see case films too. And that's often been tough in the public relations industry because we're not budgeted to do that. We don't have big in-house production teams, and we're not investing necessarily in that area, which needs to change, because judges would much rather watch a compelling 2-minute case film than, read through this pedantic entry, and cut through the clutter. So, we're in a visual world, but, teams have to, if they decide to win from the start, they need to plan for getting the assets required to tell that case film. I often was faced with situations where, all I really had to work with were media clips that no one had ever thought to film the human side of the story, the impact on the target. And that's how the story has to come alive. A really good ad agency will always draft a case film. If they know this idea has got winning potential in a creative show, they'll draft the case film before the team ever executes. So they know exactly the content they need to create a winning script. But yeah, that's increasingly important in the biggest shows. The smaller shows don't require it. And, again, you have to really look at the show, look at the work, and decide how important that is.
How do you measure ROI for those, or like, where do you spend the money? Like, different awards have different costs, right? If you do all the awards, you spend too much money. So how do you decide, I have a certain budget and I want to spend that money efficiently? How do I know if it's better to go for a few bigger awards, or I'll go get 15 smaller awards that I think I'm more able to win, but they're cheaper and I can have a bigger quantity? I'm sure you've had those conversations to decide where that money best gets spent.
Well, again, it gets back to the work itself. You've got to develop an award strategy for each piece of work that you believe has potential. Some work is scalable for the very biggest shows, highly competitive, where you believe it could be a campaign of the year in the sector. And in other cases, it's not. But there are places that work can win and get recognition. And it gets back to, where we started, which is understanding, where we want to win and why, for what purpose, what target, how are we going to merchandise that? Is this part of our marketing budget? Are we going to put the dollars behind merchandising our wins? And also putting money behind clients that want to win. There are many clients I worked with that every year expected us to enter pretty much every campaign we worked on. Okay. So they believe.
Wait, hold on. So you had clients, that expected everything you worked on with that client would get submitted for an award. That seems preposterous.
Well, no, not really, because it's part of client investment. I mean, think about it, especially on large campaigns, large, big brands spending $1, $2, $3 million. They want to see their work win. They expect it from their ad agencies. They expect it from their PR firms. And we work as integrated teams in these. I mean, in many situations, some of the winning campaigns, they're not solely public relations idea or work. We're part of a swim lane of multiple agencies doing integrated work. And we work closely together on, all the campaigns. And we divide up the shows. Who's going to take the advertising creative shows? Who's going to take the public relations shows, et cetera. And then you have to think about, too, we haven't even talked about awards for individuals and how important that is in terms of attracting and retaining and rewarding talent.
Awards for people. So not individual. Ketchum and this big brand won this corporate award. Now it's actually, Betsy herself won this award, or Eric himself won this, person of the year, whatever,
professional of the year, or we write a lot of entries, for our clients. They want to win in-house team. Our CMOs on the client side also want recognition. So, I mean, there's multiple kinds of awards. And then, of course, agencies also want to win agency of the year if and package that work. So there's a client awards, there's professional people awards, and there's agency awards. And then there's take a look at all the amazing Fast Company awards. Companies want to be, in world-changing ideas, and, they want to be an innovative company, and awards show that. So, it's back to, awards are important on so many levels, and you can, with a budget. And again, you've got to be realistic with the work you have on hand. I mean, one of the biggest mistakes is throwing a piece of work in everything. You really have to be strategic about it. So that's, I think, where I come in, and, deconstructing the work and really finding the right storyline. That's the mistake. I mean, oftentimes people think, oh, heck, I'm just going to whip this baby up and submit it. We may go through 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 drafts.
What the storyline? A lot of people might guess that the storyline is just what I did. Like, I'm just describing what I did. But are you suggesting, no, the storyline is something different than what you did? Because the work usually itself has a story, but you're sort of layering on some other storyline beyond the work itself. Is that right?
Well, you've got to start with sizing up and explaining the problem that you're trying to solve. And again, the bigger, more aspirational the problem and your goals are, the more judges will perk up and then evaluate the creative effectiveness of the solution that you're executing, and then looking at, the results you have, which have to be far more than media impressions. Ultimately, you have to change minds, you have to move the needle, you've got to affect, positive change. And I think that's why, purpose work has an advantage over, work that kind of stuff that keeps the lights on at night and pays the bills. Purpose work, I mean, judges are human. They want to see work that changes society, and they want to see brands doing wonderful things and achieving, reputation and sentiment and out of that. But so, I mean, oftentimes that takes the cake, because if a piece of purpose work doing wonderful things and solving major world issues is up against, humorous work or fun work that merely promotes and sells more products, it's hard to be in that same category. In fact, Cannes Lions is introducing a whole humor category for humor, to bring back humor, because honestly, if you were there in the past couple of years, there's not a heck of a lot of humor winning. It's pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, it's when I was there, I just thought, because we were shortlisted for an NFT company, and what we did, had some fun to it, but okay, it's NFTs, we're selling crypto, and you're looking at some of these other things, and it's okay, people in a developing country don't have healthcare access or clean water, or all these people that were victims of gun violence, and you're like, okay, I don't know how we're going to beat these people, because this is a very different level. We're just pushing product over here, right? So I understand there's a big difference there.
Yeah, we got the gun violence, unfortunately, but no, you're correct. And in less developed countries, there's many more social problems that need solving, and that's wide open territory for companies to come in and do something. I'd mentioned this piece of work I found that nobody saw for a creative show was for Iceland Foods, and this was a supermarket that we developed the first interest-free microloans for food to help people in the UK when food inflation was even higher there. I think 17% compared to even in the US at 9%, because they were barely scraping by, especially when children were out of school and they weren't getting meals at school. So the supermarket really formed a new kind of CSR and paid for the interest through a third party, so its customers could have these small, doable microloans that they would pay back, and it made a huge difference. It's still underway, but that kind of work is highly awards worthy, even though the type of things we did behind to make it successful and pave the way was public affairs and media relations. But that one, a gold in creative commerce at Cannes and 2 PR Lions. So again, purpose work, that was purpose work that was highly commercial, because it also brought in customers and it created customer loyalty. So it had true business impact.
So then how did you become the expert on this? It's not like you went to school and got a PhD in getting awards, right? So it feels like you must have got thrown into this at some point. You did something right. It stuck. What do you think what was it about your process or your thought process and your approach to doing it that clicked and made you this star in awards?
Well, I think it's because, again, and the team that I ran and brand for many, many years, we went in to win awards with every campaign we did. In other words, we felt if we weren't giving our clients best of class awards worthy work, we weren't doing our job. I mean, what are clients paying us for if we're not pushing the envelope, pushing boundaries, looking at innovation and doing new things as opposed to the same old, same old. So we won a lot of awards consistently. I stepped in to help others write awards. We also had a very developed awards culture, 30, 40 years in the making. That was, when I started, we planned to win, and we put the resources to help teams, write better entries and work ahead of these deadlines so that the work that we ultimately packaged had a higher potential to win. So it took those kinds of commitments and resources to do it. And so I ended up developing quite a big team. Initially, I was involved in running awards ahead of each season in just the US. And by the way, we also, I think we might have been the only agency putting financial incentives behind winning. So, hey, it was nice to win. It's nice to get that trophy. It's nice to put that win on your resume, but a little cash in the pocket.
Bounty, huh? A little bounty. Fee, yeah.
But we called it the Ketchum kudos in its earliest iteration. But that was huge to teams. And so it motivated them because, you have to understand that writing awards takes work and time. And this is above your billable day in many situations. So, those extra little incentives, besides just the great feeling of winning and going on stage are super important. But I think what really changed things were, past US, about 10 years ago, our holding company's Omnicom, their goal at Cannes Lions and creative shows is to be the holding company, the creative company of the year. And they believe that if more than just the ad agencies got behind entering, and this was, at the time that Cannes Lions, I think it was in 2009, they launched PR Lions and were inviting PR in, and they kind of recast the whole festival from advertising to, creativity and communication. So, that's when all of a sudden we had to step up, and somebody needed to produce entries and work with every country across the world and figure out what's the work we want to package and get behind. And so that required a global awards director. And so I became, at that point, a global awards director. And that changed my whole life because I was no longer a strategic creative planner running strategy sessions for brands. I was focused solely on awards. So
and now that now that you're out in the wild outside of Ketchum working with other companies, what would you say is the 3 biggest mistakes that you keep seeing repeated over and over and again? The 3 things that you immediately have to fix?
Well, I think it starts with story and knowing how to plan and structure and format an entry and an award strategy for each case, knowing what is and isn't awards worthy and figuring out where it needs to play. But it really comes down to story. Again, I see so many entries written kind of like a textbook with everything but the kitchen sink in it. And not everything that we do is equally important. Simplifying the story is so important. But I think you have to sit down and block and tackle it with the team. Again, as I mentioned, I require teams to do kind of a first draft because they know the work, they know what they did, and they usually can explain what they did, but they can't always explain why. I can't tell you how often I come across an entry where, again, the goal stated is a PR goal, like coverage. It's not the business goal. So I think it's a strategic planning approach that you start with what's the problem, what was the insight, what really is the goal and intention of spending in this work, and how do you articulate the idea, get away from tactics? I see teams writing tactics. So nobody cares. So again, judges are human. They need something that's a joy to read or watch.
Can you give an example of, maybe you can anonymize it, but just something that you saw recently or that you still remember of, okay, it said this, and then I had to make a lot of deletions and make it say something else?
Well, I think, again, the biggest problem teams run into is they think their work is awards worthy because it got so much press or it got so much engagement. And that's just one factor. So again, they have to kind of go back to the drawing board. And by the time I'm finished, they will see the brilliance of their work. It often is brilliant, but it's hidden in there. But a good example, a former colleague of mine is now head of communications for a major cruise company, and I got a call and he said, "Hey, I think this could win. We did this big anniversary celebration, and we did a kind of a recreation of the inaugural voyage from years and years ago, and we had all the big brass out, and we did the cracking of the bottle on the ship." And I'm like, okay, that sounds like turnkey anniversary work for a cruise ship. That's how I would expect you to celebrate an anniversary. So I don't know on a creative level if that can cut through to these big shows, maybe in travel or maybe in smaller shows. And then I got down to the results, and pretty much their only form of measurement, because again, you've got one of the biggest mistakes is that you're not in touch with the real goal, and you're not aligning it with your results. I mean, if media coverage is your only goal and getting media coverage, well, they're aligned, but usually there's a business reason. So getting back to the cruise, okay, so what did this anniversary celebration do for you besides generate lots and lots of coverage, right? Well, we didn't really set out to have it do much more than that. And of course, we're in a pandemic. Coming out of the pandemic, everybody's cruising again, right? So we can't really say that as a result of all this attention, anybody decided to book a cruise on this line. And that's where it kind of falls flat. All of a sudden, you're not a campaign of the year in product brand development. So, I mean, that's a good example where just kind of going through it. Now, could I make that story sexier? Absolutely. Could I give them a set of objectives? Could we find more anecdotally other forms of measurement, both qualitative and quantitative? Most likely. But this particular communications director only wanted to win the biggest shows. And I will always be honest and tell you if you can or can't. And I will do everything I can to turn, essentially, I wouldn't call it an ugly duckling, but let's call it a homely duckling into a swan.
Is there ever things where you just said, no, we need to just not submit this? You're going to waste your money. You're going to win nothing. Don't even bother.
Yeah, well, again, or back down your expectation. Find shows where you are competitive. And how I help clients and companies understand that is take a look at last year's winners.
Is this like college admissions? It's like, you're not getting into Harvard, so maybe I've got some more easy to admit schools for you. Is this kind of like we're saying?
State school.
Find different safety school awards,
community college. Yeah, no, I mean, there's a place for everything. And again, if it's important for the client to win together, if it's important for trophies, it's important for celebrations. Think about award shows too. It's a chance for clients and agencies to celebrate together. It's acknowledgement that the work they're doing together is best of class. I mean, it's important having that social time and having that kind of recognition. But yeah, I'm always honest. I don't want companies to waste money. And certainly at my former agency, we aggressively went after a certain level of A-tier shows. We passed on the B's and the C's unless they were absolutely critical to clients, in which case sometimes clients shared in the cost of entry, or, picked up some of the time and expenses. But, we always have been realistic. And my goal, of course, because I wanted the headline, most finalists, most winners. My strategy was always to find one decent piece of work for as many categories in that show as possible. That's all you need to get the most finalists.
Oh, a single piece of work, like one project, one creative campaign, and then submit it to 15 different awards.
What I was saying is that within a show, and by the way, shows are revenue generators. So what's happening, what I'm saying
I see. So 15 different awards within a same show. So like in the Hollywood, it's like, okay, this one movie won 10 different Oscars at that one Oscars show, but they won a bunch of prizes in that show. Is that what you're saying?
No. What I'm saying is, so let's say a show, because one show does, Innovation Saver Awards is a good example from Provoke. They have 80 categories. It's overwhelming.
Right.
Most agencies, and teams like, where do I even begin? I begin by finding, if I can find 20 pieces of work and spread them out. In other words, if I could find 80 pieces of work that I believed could win every single category, I would. But that's how we would get 24, 26, 28 finalists in a show. It does take quantity and quality to dominate. when you have a show with 80 categories. Holy smokes, right? It's like, and it's so off-putting. But I mean, these are revenue generators for trade magazines. In contrast, PR Week has, don't quote me on it, but it's like 18 to 20 categories, very selective. And they're, again, looking for campaign of the year in that category. So the stakes are super, super high. So you just have to find your place and where a piece of work can compete effectively. But I've told many teams sometimes that it's just not there. You don't have the measurement, the proof of success. You don't really have an idea that will break through. Gaps, weaknesses.
How can a small company compete then against big giants like Ketchum that've got full-time people like you just sitting there working?
Well,
on
they did have a full-time person like me.
Did.
Yeah.
So maybe now they can compete against Ketchum, but a lot of these bigger companies have more resources to dedicate to doing this, whereas smaller firms are maybe more independent firms. It's just, hey, this is, everyone's got to steal some time to do this, and we don't have enough reps, we don't have enough experience. How are we ever going to compete with the big companies?
It starts, I think, with the CEO. Do they believe in awards, right? And if they do, and if they make it possible for their people, I'm just talking about agency now. I mean, billability is so important in an agency. If they give permission to people to enter, and if they have some way of identifying awards-worthy work, from at top down, and then a process to develop it. I mean, we were so successful because we had such a sophisticated process and the proper money and resources to help teams be successful. That was my job. I was winning for clients, but I was really winning for these individual teams and for the agency. And so, there are a ton of agencies that have done well in awards that are small. And, Curtis's company is a perfect example of that. They, in PR Week this year, it's 6 or 7 finalists, which is extensive. Some big agencies are lucky to have 2 to 4 finalists a year. And a lot depends on the year too. I mean, year to year, sometimes you have blockbuster campaigns, and another year it's a little drier. But the point is a process and a commitment to it, and putting some resources against it, and then being very selective and smart about where you're putting your dollars for the right reasons.
What do you say to the CEOs who don't believe in awards? Right? I've had plenty of conversations with executives who think, hey, awards don't move the needle, they don't matter, right? So how do you convince them?
Well, I think, I don't know that you do. And I think that's why we used to evaluate how important awards were for different clients. And if it wasn't important for clients, sometimes they weren't going to give you even permission to enter awards. I mean, we would put our dollars elsewhere. We'll put our dollars behind clients that do care. And there are tons of clients that do care. In fact, make it a priority to get recognition for the work we're doing together, because it helps their careers too. I mean, not just the agency, it's helping their careers. It's showing that their communications department is, again, best in class. They're doing top work. So, for those that don't want to win, I also it's so funny because when I go around searching, trying to figure out and evaluate work from healthcare to corporate to tech to brand, and I'll run into some client teams, despite their huge budgets, it's like, we haven't done any awards worthy work this year. And I'm thinking to myself, that just can't be, because again, why? There's got to be something you're doing that deserves merit and recognition.
Something's got to be good.
Yeah. And so I start to think, well, maybe they think it's just too hard, too much commitment. I don't have time. That is a factor, because it's hours at the end of the day on the weekends to pull these suckers together, and you can't just do them,
There's too many awards to the point where it's like everyone's getting an award. And I think about like cars, you see on the commercials, like, oh, our car won this award. And then you look into it and like every car won an award, right? And is there too many awards to the point where like they're meaningless? Because if you just put enough effort in, you can turn an ugly duckling into an award winner. So you know what I'm saying? Like some people think, oh, everyone's winning an award. Like, oh, like an award is table stakes, and you shouldn't be excited to win an award. You should just be freaked out if you didn't win anything.
I think more it's a little bit of awards burnout because they proliferated so greatly. They're now, even some of the biggest shows are adding more categories. That's more revenue, that's more opportunity. They're adding specialized shows just for healthcare, just for purpose, just for innovation, and it becomes a little overwhelming. I would receive emails all the time from shows all over the place, like, please enter us, please enter us, please enter us. And so you have to vet the shows, and again, put your dollars where they're going to do the most good for you. You can't enter everything. And again, I look at the peer set. I always tell a company, you want to enter that award, go look at who won, what work won last year. Is that your peer set? That's how I would evaluate it at Ketchum. I would basically say, are there any other agencies that we consider our competition winning in the show? If no, that kind of tells you it's not your peer set. And again, with limited dollars, but even with big spending, we would go after the biggest shows. Those were important, the ones that everybody acknowledged were the most prestigious to win, and most important to our clients to win.
Right. What about creativity coming from ChatGPT and generative AI, right? Everyone's trying to be creative, and all of a sudden in the past year, it's, hey, well, you don't have to think anymore. The computer is more creative than any one human. Are you seeing a trend in that direction where maybe these submissions become easier because you let the computer write it? On the flip side, if you're a judge, it's like, oh my gosh, what am I reading? How do I know this was written by a human or a computer?
Yeah, and I don't think ChatGPT can write an awards entry. I think that possibly, and I've had a toy this fall. I haven't tried, but it's on my list to do, to see how I could develop a prompt that would ever get to any kind of entry close to what we would write, on the 10th version. So I think it might be a useful tool to improve an entry that's almost there. But the reason I don't think, this is where I think the human factor and an intelligence that we have in our business can effectively write a better entry, because it's not, the information that goes into that entry is not in the public domain. So it's going to source media clips, what's been written about it, what's been, announced, or what's public information. Brand briefs are not public information. Measurements, in-depth 40-page measurement reports are not public information. So I don't know how it would source the kind of information we bring to the table and selectively strategically write in an entry to frame it. I don't think it can. But again, maybe it could improve things. I think the prompt, coming up with a way to develop a prompt for an awards entry against a specific show, a specific format, I don't know, but I'm actually kind of curious to try. So if there's anybody out there that wants to work with me and test this out and pilot it, hey, I'm here.
Well, at some point, like the way you did the peer review of, like, who are our peers and what did they win last year, to see. But you wonder at some point, if you submit enough data into the system of, like, okay, these are the award-winning entries before, here's what the case studies were that was public, you can start to create a pattern, right? Of, like, this is the pattern.
But that's not your story. They're
went.
not your story. They're not your business. They're not. So, I mean,
style or format or, certain trends that seem to repeat themselves. Maybe not.
I think every entry is so individualized. And, if you've ever read any of the Cannes Lions entries in creative strategy, first of all, they develop these extensive PowerPoints.
Yep.
These are the brains of the strategic planners and the creative directors who have found fresh insights, that no one else has seen, made connections no one's seen. And they're putting together this entry, and it's in poetry. I mean, I always say there's some science and there's a definite formula to writing for different shows, but there's an art form. And the art form is done best. You asked earlier, what's a big mistake? One huge mistake is pushing down the writing of the entry to the lowest common denominator, as opposed to a very senior person taking the time to draft the entry and pouring their knowledge into that entry. It's a very different entry than an account executive who, let's say, they can talk about what they did, but they don't necessarily know the bigger story and why they did it. So the more senior a person can take responsibility and ownership over the entry, the better off you'll be, because they know story. And then natural storytellers. Again, not everyone is. And I think it's also changed too, because I will say 10, 15, 20 years ago, awards entries were more formulaic and they were a little stiffer and, academic. But I think with the influence of advertising creative shows and a style of writing for shows, it's changing in the public relations profession too. So I have a different style for different shows. I know what wins in that show and how to stand out in that show.
I guess that's what I meant. It was something like that. Like, what the style is for each show, that maybe at some point, some generative AI would eventually pick up, oh, this is the style for this show. This is the style for that show. Maybe not. We'll see.
Possibly, I know Provoke Media has an arrangement with WARC. And if you subscribe to WARC, you can see all the winning entries in the Sabre Awards program. Same goes for PRSA Silver Ambles. If you're a member of PRSA, you have access to their case study library. Same thing with Effie. Effie Awards is one of the biggest brand shows, out there for brands. And, again, as members, and if you subscribe, and same thing with Cannes, if you subscribe to Love the Work, you have access to all the winners. You have the written entries, the campaign boards, the case films, hugely educational. But also, they come with a price. But so, assuming you could get access to all that information, it would see style for sure. It could copy style, but you have to develop your own story, and the brilliance is in how you tell it.
And then last thing before you go, you mentioned 40-page measurement report. I've never seen a measurement report that big. What are they measuring, and what do people need to be measuring for themselves and then for these awards? And what is 40 pages worth of measurement reports?
Well, social media metrics, alone require cutting things a whole number of ways. And that's a whole science. But a lot of the results we need to win awards come from the brand teams and the analytics teams themselves. In other words, it's not metrics that we're responsible for measuring and evaluating, messaging and effectiveness of delivery of messaging, and, impressions and engagement and hits and time on a website, all those kinds of things. But, sales, what we need, in most cases, did it impact sales? Did it impact corporate reputation? Companies do studies on their reputation. So how does our work play into building trust and reputation and respect? Does it generate repeat customers? Does it create more loyalty? So a lot of those types of research reports and results we don't necessarily do, but working with our client, we can track that. So again, it's important to decide to set out to win, and make sure at the proposal stage and the idea stage that the proper measurement is in place to evaluate whether our work is successful and whether it breaks through. So
right. And lastly, so where do people find you? They're like, okay, I need Betsy to come here and help me win some awards. So how do they reach you?
Betsy S. Quinn at gmail.com, and my phone. I'm on LinkedIn, ping me.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to talk to you. I love helping companies. I think this is one of the funnest things ever, to help rethink sometimes the work and show people the brilliance of it that maybe they didn't understand in just the doing, and how to frame that story. It's so rewarding to see that work in a finished package, and see it win and see it get recognition that it deserves. So I like to try to re-engineer that and improve awards performance, as well as save companies money and make sure they put their money in the right place for the right reasons.
And then the last thing is red carpet wardrobe strategies. Now that'll be a whole other episode. When you actually get to the award show, what are you wearing? And I am curious, just before you go, last thing, is there some impact on, hey, if you're going to buy a few tables, if you're going to bring a whole crew, there's more revenue, they're going to want to make sure you win some awards. Is there this leg up on, if you're going to come and be in person, they'll make sure you get something, versus, hey, if you're not going to come at all, maybe we don't want to give you a bunch of awards if you're not going to actually show up in person?
That doesn't happen.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
That doesn't happen. Because the decisions on winners by category are done in the judging environment way before the award show. There's no bait and switch. But where I was going with that is, I would hope agencies and companies increasingly, I mean, these are expensive shows. I mean, right. $800, $900 a ticket, $8,000 to $10,000 for a table. I mean, Cannes is even, I'll forget it, but use it as a reward for the people who did the work, not just the top brass, right? I'm certainly, when an agency is up for Agency of the Year, you're going to have a blend of, but give the stage to the people doing the work. I mean, there is nothing more personally exciting than, having that opportunity to go on stage, with your group. But it's definitely expensive, no question about it. But I used to hear all the time, it's like, I don't get to go because I'm only an account executive, or I'm only a supervisor. I'm not a VP or an EVP. And, I think this is a wonderful opportunity to show and recognize the people who are doing the brilliant work and motivate them to do even more.
Betsy, I really appreciate the time. This is so good. Really opened my eyes to all the things, hiding behind there in the awards world. So thank you for spending time with me today, and we'll see what 2024 brings. It's a whole new year.
It's a whole new ballgame.
That's the thing about awards. Every year they come back again, right? You didn't win last year, you can win this year. It's not a one-time only thing.
And in PR, they start early. You should be planning by summer of the year ahead of what you're entering. And by the way, once you put the time and effort and resources into a good foundation entry, you're good to go. Right. It doesn't take tons of work to reformat that work for different shows. So the heavy lifting is definitely in the upfront, in the proper identification of what you're going to get behind and creating a word strategy, and then putting the effort into perfecting the story and developing a case film that's really convincing and, great to watch.
Excellent. That's a good point. The hardest part is making one entry. Once you made the first entry, then you can do the rest. So Betsy, thank you so much.
The pain is upfront.
Betsy, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you to my guest, and thanks for listening. Subscribe to get the latest episodes each week, and we'll see you next time.